You know, they say that timing is everything, and I believe that to be true. And I've been associated with this organization superficially, and I've been to some of their events, and I've actually emceed some of the events. It's called Arizona Talks. And the goal from this organization from its inception, and this is going back years now, is public discourse and civil debate. Joining us is Carlos Alfaro from the organization, and what a time to be an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the opportunity to really exemplify civil dialogue, our response. What is it going to be? And I think civil dialogue and engagement is how we should respond to this.
And you have been, I don't know if you've been actually fearful of violence, but you know how the rhetoric can get ramped up and it doesn't solve anything. And I know that your goal as an organization has been to bring people together of differing opinions and hash it out.
Yeah.
How has what happened to Charlie Kirk affected you and the organization?
It stopped us in our tracks. I mean, personally and professionally, I mean, we stopped because we work in the same field. We work in the same mission to bring people together under civil discourse. And one of the thoughts that we had was you can't legislate empathy, but you can practice it. You know, you can practice that empathy, and it really comes down to every single one of us. So we're moving forward thinking about how important it is to have a culture of civil discourse.
I was at one of your events on immigration. We're going to talk about Constitution Day in a moment, but I was at one of your events on immigration where I kind of moderated the panel, and I watched the audience when the speakers are speaking. And you could tell people were in the audience were of mixed beliefs on the topic. And there was eye rolls and hands in the air. But about halfway through, you began to see heads nodding. And what I mean by that is there looked to be a moment where understanding began to happen, not agreement. Yeah. That's got to be the goal, right?
It's got to be the goal, and it's the only way to respond to something like this and all the challenges that we have. Immigration is tough. Civil discourse is tough. But if we retreat into violence or even silence, you know, we're going to be complicit in how our nation is degrading in this way. So we're encouraging everybody around us to not be afraid to go out, to continue to talk and have that conversation. And we're pushing even harder this fall to really promote that message. And
in light of what's happened, there are so many people that are clamoring for a change in the narrative because we all agree. I shouldn't say we all agree. The crazies are always going to exist. But the vast majority of people agree that the way we do this has got to change, that this is an unspeakable, unacceptable, any violence, but especially death. But where does it begin? Where does that narrative change begin? And you've been doing this now for quite a while, and I've told you off the air, I've said it on the air, I've got the utmost respect for what you do because you set the tone for the evening with the events, and then people are respectful and passionately disagree, which is exactly what you want. You don't want a bunch of yes men and women. You get passionate opinions.
Yeah, and I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't think it can happen. A lot of people think about politics very negatively, and they point to screaming rather than listening. So it's up to us to show the example that there are great leaders in office. There are great thought leaders that are willing to have the conversation and have a tough discourse together. And I feel like it changes people. When they come to an event and they experience that understanding and the ability to be allowed to disagree with somebody, I think that's the key to continuing to do this over and over again.
And usually at events like this, it's people that are passionate about the topic to begin with. Mm-hmm. So they're very passionate about their own opinions and they want to be heard. Yeah. And when they realize they are being heard, they seem to be more willing to listen to the other side and then not agree, but respect. And to me, that is the biggest victory of all, when you can see a Greg Stanton and a Mark Lamb on the dais where they are not going to agree, but there is showing the audience a mutual respect.
Yeah, I mean, even within the speakers, they themselves were a little bit weary of each other because they're like, hey, I don't know how he's going to respond. But if we bring everybody at the table and we say, this is the respect that we're going to have to each other, I think you can really come up with some really good discourse. And that's what we tried to do. I think the magic also happens in the audience. Some of those people haven't seen each other. They haven't met somebody that believes so different than them. And when you bring them together, rather than yelling or disrespecting each other. It's more like, wow, I'm gonna listen and at least disrespect respectfully, or I'm gonna at least disagree disrespectfully.
And when you do it like you guys do it, you are allowing people to be seen as human, which is what we do wrong. First, we marginalize, and then we demonize. And then when we do those things, it makes it acceptable to be mean and to be angry and vile and vitriolic. These events show that you may not agree. Let's use Mark Lamb because he's such an eloquent, outspoken guy, but he's a very kind man. When you listen to Mark speak about the topic of immigration, because that night was so remarkable, you may not agree with his take on immigration, but you understand because of listening to him that all of his motivations come from a good place. Now he's a human being that you just disagree with.
Yeah.
And that's where we all need to be.
And that's so much a part of what the conversation should be. We shouldn't just come and talk about immigration right off the bat. Who is this person? You know, what is their story in believing what they believe about this issue? And I think that's one of the things that we do very well is we try to bring that human side first before having that heavy policy discussion.
You know, people that don't know Mark see him, the cowboy hat, he was the sheriff, has the gun belt on, and then you hear Mark speak fluent Spanish because he did his mission in, I believe, Argentina. And then he talks about how they have to rescue people and how saving lives in the desert because the human traffickers were abandoning them and crying and praying with people. And right away, now I may not agree with his stance, but I had no idea that this guy was a real human being. I just thought he was arrest him, throw him out. And he's, you know, when you see that, and on the other side of the argument, people that may be more of an open borders or accepting of people in the country illegally, when you hear their story, you think, I may not agree with your point, but I see why you believe what you believe. And all of a sudden now you can't hate them because they're human beings.
Yeah, and they're fellow neighbors, they're citizens, we have to live together.
And we also have to recognize on every side of every argument, there are going to be the angry people that will not stop the anger. They just are going to vent. And we have to all cumulatively ignore it or at least point it out and say it's wrong on our side and yours.
And not highlight it, not make the whole story about how somebody is celebrating or how somebody's taking it out of context. Most of us, millions of us, know that this is wrong, know that it's important to have civil discourse, and that what happened this week was awful at the personal level, but also at the country level. You know, if we believe in the Constitution and these ideas of freedom, violence can never replace discourse.
Talk about the Constitution Day event, because this is a little different than what we're talking about. But what can people expect, and why should families come out? Because this is going to be a great family-friendly event.
Absolutely. So we have phenomenal speakers from leaders in Arizona, from the Supreme Court to the Sandra Day O'Connor Law School to the City Council. And we're getting together to celebrate the Constitution. September 17th has been the day, the anniversary of the signing of the Constitution. And coming up to 250 years of celebrating America, I mean, this is the perfect moment to have this discussion. And, you know, I think this event next week will be the culmination of us talking about the principles of this country, open dialogue, freedom of speech, and why it's important to come together, especially now.
Yeah, and the idea that we are not just being respectful because we're on the dais, but genuine respect for each other, because you know that if you're engaged in the public discourse and you're with somebody that you don't agree with, they also are as passionately engaged and they're working as hard as you are.
Exactly. And I mean, we're working towards a vision where libraries, civic centers, you know, community centers are not just service providers. They're community building centers to have this discourse.
Gathering places.
Yes. I mean, I think that's the real way to respond. And that's what we're trying to do, not only with Constitution Day, but with every event that we do, is energize the community around us to have these events over and over and over. And this dialogue is not silence, but rather a normal thing that we do all the time.
So if people want more information, if people want to go or at least learn about it, where do they go?
They go to arizonatalks.org. We're on every platform. Essentially, we're getting bigger and bigger, finding Arizonans that say, dialogue is important to me. I may have my strong opinions, but I want to listen and try to understand. And I think there's more of us
Oh, yeah.
There is, when we hear news stories or when we talk about it, it may seem like we're in the minority, but really most of us just want to get along, want to understand one another, and be strong in our convictions.
And just maybe the silver lining on this very, very dark cloud this week might be a return to civil engagement where people are going to say, I am going to be proactive in this. I'm going to go to an event like an Arizona Talks event because we need to stand strong and show people that we're capable and willing and desire public discourse.
Yeah, Arizona can be at the center of this for the rest of the country. We have been for a lot of issues, education, immigration. We can certainly do it for civil dialogue. And that's definitely the mission of our organization, is to try to promote that vision.
All right, check out ArizonaTalks.org. ArizonaTalks.org. Just click on the icon for the Constitution Day celebration. Come out. It's going to be a fun event.
Would love to have all of you there.
Thanks, man. It's always good to talk with you.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.